Good afternoon and welcome. It's the Joel Natalie Show live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio here at 5th and State. And with us in studio is the junior senator of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Senator Dave McCormick. Senator McCormick, great to see you, sir. Appreciate it.
Hey, I'm glad to be here in your studio on a beautiful day in Erie.
Yeah, you've been seeing some of the sites here. Talk about some of the places.
Oh, it's been a great day. We drove up this morning from Pittsburgh, and we went to the Penn State campus here, which was incredible. And we saw both the Innovation Center, as well as met a number of the kids in the various departments, engineering, plastics engineering, all sorts of innovation. A number of these kids already have great jobs, and these are the kinds of skills in engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering. These are the kinds of opportunities that I think bode very well for this part of Pennsylvania and for the Commonwealth in general. So that was one stop. We went to the shipyard,
great.
where we saw the dry dock where lots of repairs are done on a regular basis, a number of big facilities, and then we are here with you. So it's been a good day.
Fantastic. We're glad that you're here. I want to jump right to some of the things that are on your legislative agenda. You introduced a joint resolution last week on the 10th, actually, for an amendment to the Constitution to implement term limits. Again, now this was tried back in 1995. They actually got a positive vote, but not enough to make it go to the states for a constitutional amendment. What's the thinking these days?
Well, it starts with what our founders imagined. Okay. Our founders never imagined you'd have career politicians. They never thought people were going to go to Washington when they were in their 20s and come back when they were in their 80s, right? The idea was blacksmiths and doctors and farmers, teachers would take a chapter of their careers. They'd have careers in other things, and then they go to serve. And we need to get back to that. And the reason I think term limits are so important is because it would ensure fresh blood coming in. Listen, I just beat an incumbent, as you know, in this last Senate race. Incumbents win 93% of the time, right? The deck is stacked against challengers, against new blood, and so the proposal, the amendment I propose, would cap service at 12 years, either 2 terms in the Senate or 6 terms in the House, and 12 years is a long time. And I've said no matter whether I get the legislation passed or not that I'll term limit myself to 2 terms voluntarily. But I think this is a great way to shake up Washington, which is what I promised to do. I promised to come in and propose big ideas that would change things. And, this is one of those things where 83% of voters agree with me that we should have term limits. So I think this is a good issue to push on.
Now that you've been there basically about 100 days, have you felt like this should be more of a young man's game, a young woman's game?
Well, I'd say 2 things. Man, it's tough. I mean, I'm no young man.
I mean, you have a substantial career behind you.
Yeah. So, but
which is helpful.
Yeah. No, it definitely is helpful. I think it's less about age, although obviously at a certain point people start to lose capability. But it's different for every person. Honestly, you see Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. There's a radically different energy level, even though they're very close in age. I think it has much more to do with new ideas and new energy. I think it's inevitable. If you're in something a long time, you become part of the problem, not the solution. And when people talk about the swamp, I think what they're saying is that Washington has taken on a life of its own, and it sort of captures you, and the lobbyists and all the support and all the the trappings that go with it. And I think we break the back of that by saying, listen, it's a great honor and privilege to serve. That's certainly the way I feel. But everybody's service should end. And when their service ends, I will welcome, at the end of 12 years, if I'm fortunate enough to have a second term, or at the end of 6 years, I will welcome the next generation coming in because we need fresh blood.
Let's pivot here. We have Senator Dave McCormick with us here in studio on Talk Erie. An outside observer might say that the attempt on President Trump's life in Butler last July and the arson at the governor's mansion last week, that Pennsylvania is becoming known for political violence. What do you think about this current climate?
Well, it's so funny you say that because I made that connection myself the other day. I was there on the stage and had just stepped down when President Trump was shot. Saw the whole thing firsthand, and I wrote an article at the time that said this has to stop. This political violence has to stop, and it's not about party. There's fault on both sides. Whenever you dehumanize someone, and then it becomes easier to do violence against them. Not by you necessarily, but by other people. Mm-hmm. So we need to clean up our political dialogue. We need to disagree with one another in very strong terms because we have very different visions. I have a very different vision than many Democrats for the direction of our country. But we have to do that in a way that doesn't dehumanize. And then here we have Governor Shapiro suffers a version of the very same thing. Ironically, I had spoken to him that day.
Wow.
And he told me he was nervous because he had to go prepare for his Seder dinner. 80 people in the governor's mansion that he was going to preside over. And we got finished talking about 3 o'clock, something like that. Less than 12 hours later, you have an arsonist that throws 2 Molotov cocktails into the governor's mansion, sets on a fire. And if he could have found his way to the governor's bedroom, God only knows what would have happened. Yeah. So I came out in another very strong statement, which is, listen, I'm not saying this despite the fact that Governor Shapiro and I are from different parties. I'm saying because of it, because he is from a different party, because we see things so differently. I absolutely say we have to stop.
And it goes against all of Pennsylvania's values. When you think of how we were created with William Penn, this should not be happening in PA.
No, it's a disgrace. It shouldn't be happening anywhere in America. And people say, what are you going to do? And I say, well, the only thing I think you can do if you're a political figure is lead by example, is speak in a way that people understand that we have big disagreements, but the other side is not evil. The other side is not a demon. The other side should not be dehumanized. The other side just, if you believe in your values, the other side just may be wrong.
Right. Let's talk about some issues that have sharp opinions. First off, the refugee resettlement funding. We talked about that a few weeks ago here on the phone. What are you hearing about from the administration about this issue here?
I'm honestly, I'm not hearing much on it, but
not at all.
But
huh?
I know it's a big.
Then the freeze is still in place.
The freeze is still in place, and it's part of a broader freeze. To be honest with you, where if you step back and look at the challenge is for 4 years. I don't think this is disputable, even though people see it differently politically. The borders were wide open. There was a very unaccountable, unchecked flow of illegal immigrants coming into our country, and even many legal programs were expanded or misused in ways that dramatically grew the number of illegal people in our country. And that was what President Trump ran on. It's something I agreed with him on, that we needed to stop that. And so the efforts to stop the flow of illegal migrants at the border have been wildly successful. It's remarkable. It just shows how bankrupt I believe the former administration was on this particular issue. But in pursuit of that, a number of other programs have been frozen. And I know that this is particularly problematic in Erie because you've had this history of refugees coming to Erie, making it their home, becoming outstanding members of the community, and I know that the uncertainty around that, and also the uncertainty and the worry that it creates is a very real thing on people's minds. So I'm continuing to press to try to get clarity on that. I don't think people should read anything into that necessarily. I think it's part of a broader effort to free spending on lots of things, but I recognize it's a real area of concern.
Well, at some point, something's got to give. Some clarity needs to be brought, right?
Yes, I agree with you.
Let's talk about the other issue, of revoking student visas from graduate students at Gannon University. It's been confirmed to us that infractions involved in these cases are amounting to traffic violations. Any one of us, you or I, could blow through a red light, and they're getting their visas revoked. Gannon's so important to our community, and these international students, some are from our friends, our most favored nations. They're getting their visas revoked. What do you think?
Let me tell you what I think a wise policy would be, and then. Whether it's Gannon or other places, to the extent that things are happening that aren't consistent with that, then I think my job as senator would be to try to go figure that out and explore whether those were bad decisions. But my view is that we do have a number of students or student-age people that have come into our country on visas that have violated both the terms and the spirit of those visas. And what happened on our university campuses comes to mind, particularly Columbia, Penn, where you literally had people that are on student visas who were inciting violence, who were spewing anti-Semitic hatred, who were conducting violence, being part of an incredibly disruptive sets of riots and activities. And I said at the time, during the campaign, I wrote an op-ed with Secretary Rubio, and I said, listen, if someone is here on a student visa and they violate the spirit and the terms of that visa, we should revoke the visa and send them home. Right. And a good test of the theory is, if somebody's doing something now that if you'd have known about it ahead of time, before you gave them the visa, you would have not given them a visa because of it. That's a pretty good test. If that's that doesn't sound like a traffic violation to me, right? So if people are getting deported and losing their student visas because of a traffic violation, that would seem like a violation of common sense. If someone's doing the other kinds of activities I thought of, so that's my position on this. And for those of your listeners or anybody across Pennsylvania that's affected by things like this that seem like they don't pass the common sense test, I think it's my job to process those cases and try to go figure it out and see if we can, if they've been handled inappropriately.
I mean, Gannon's reached out to your office, right? I mean, we should be able to parse who is the instigator to an anti-Semitic moment and who is just trying to finish and get their MS degree in engineering.
I agree with that.
I mean,
I agree with that. I agree with that. We have to use common sense to prevail. You know, the student visas and immigrants in general are illegal immigrants are what has made America America. You know, our student visitors, student visas have become a huge source of innovation. Our legal immigrants have become the melting pot that's made America. As you know, Joel, I'm married to a legal immigrant. So in the pursuit of securing our border, in the pursuit of sending people home that violate the terms of their visas, in the pursuit of protecting our security from some of the bad things that have happened, we also have to embrace the idea that legal immigration and students here on legal visas are a huge part of America's success.
I want to tap into your foreign policy background. Let's talk tariffs here. I don't think Americans want to be taken advantage of, but our economy has transformed over the last 40 years. We are in a global economy. We're sourced all over the world. Communist China is acting like an economic adversary. What outcomes are you looking for when it comes to this tariff strategy that the Trump administration is engaged in?
Well, I think the starting point is right where you started, which is post-World War II. America gave Europe and Japan unbelievably favorable trade terms. Later, through permanent normal trade relations, we gave China and entry into the World Trade Organization incredibly favorable trade terms. When I say favorable, much better terms for them than we had for ourselves. Right. And that was intentional. It was in America's interest because it helped rebuild Europe, it helped rebuild Japan, it helped China grow into much more of an economy that could take care of its people. But those unfair practices have now persisted. In the case of post-World War II, 75 years. And so America has an unfair deal, unfair trading practices with Europe, with Japan, with China. A simple test is, do the Europeans allow us to sell and do all the things in their economy that we allow them to do in ours? The answer would be no. Same with Canada, same with China. So what we're trying to achieve with the tariffs is fairness, fundamental fairness. And a way to describe fairness is it more or less a fair deal?
You're right.
It's like a marriage. When the marriage can sometimes get out of balance, and someone in the marriage says, "I need you to do something different to make it more fair, more balanced." That's what's happening now. And so, even though we're having tough talks with Europe, tough talks with Japan, China's in a separate case. I'll come back to China. Tough talks with Canada doesn't mean we're going to get divorced. I don't think it should. We have common values. We fought wars together. We have these great relationships, but it's been unfair. And President Trump's pushing for fairness, and that's what the tariffs are designed to do. Now, in the case of China, it's a little bit different. The reason being, we've become dependent on China for critical things that are necessary for our security. Pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, advanced manufacturing, rare metals, lithium. We're embracing all these lithium batteries. Well, lithium batteries come from China. We've got to create more independence from China, what I call strategic decoupling, to make sure that we're not dependent on China, because China is our biggest adversary. It's our biggest military adversary. It's our biggest economic adversary. Doesn't mean we have to have a Cold War with China. Doesn't mean we need to stop all economic activity with China. It does mean that we have a better balance with China. So to answer your question, sorry, it was a long wind-up, it would be fair trading practices around the world, and it would be more independence from China, strategic decoupling, where we sort of built a little bit more isolation from the Chinese economy.
How long do you think it would take for strategic decoupling? I mean, how do you onboard all those chips, for example?
Well, it's actually been happening already to some
good.
degree. A lot of companies have moved things to Vietnam and Mexico and elsewhere. To build the really tough stuff like semiconductors is going to take years, years and years. And we've got a big effort underway in the United States. I think it's inadequate. It started under the Biden administration, which I give them credit for, but it's not enough to build that kind of semiconductor capacity. We also need to win the AI, artificial intelligence arms race, because artificial intelligence drives military capability. It drives economic growth. So we're in a fight, an economic fight, and so we need to make sure we maintain leadership. So that's what I hope comes out of this effort with President Trump. What I've said, publicly, I've said this, behind the scenes to the administration, I hope they'll come out soon with a couple key deals with South Korea, with Japan, with Vietnam, with the UK, that shows the markets, here's what we're shooting for. We're not going to have 70 deals with 70 countries.
Like a template.
Yeah, here's 5 or 6 examples. This is a template. This gives you a sense. It's going to take a year. It's going to take 18 months. But here's where we're headed. I think if that were to happen, I think that would give people a little more confidence on where we're headed with tariffs.
Last question, real quick, for Senator Dave McCormick. You wrote the book, Super Power in Peril. You talk about leadership. You're a student of leadership. Where are we at with leadership as you encounter these first 100 days of the Trump administration?
Well, I think you see all sorts of different types of leadership. What I said in the book was there's 4 things that I think are the most important things for leaders. Not in any order. Number 1 is they got to have a vision, where to take the country, or where to take an organization. 2, they got to have courage. It's not just the courage to run up the hill in enemy fire. It's the courage to fight for your values, fight for what you believe, a courage to bring about changes, a courage to stand alone. The 3rd thing is you got to have humility. That's probably the thing I don't see enough of in Washington. Right. Even if you're really good at your job, you're wrong. Part of the time, my wife would say I'm wrong most of the time. So, you got to recognize that you need help from others. You need advice from others. You need to find common ground with others. So humility, to my mind, is a big part of leadership. And I think we probably don't have enough of that. And then the final one, and this is why I ran, and this is what I think, is the most important thing probably, is leadership is not about you. It's about service to others. So, this Senate seat's a privilege to have, but it's only a privilege in pursuit of service. This is not it's not for any leader. It's not about them. It's about others. It's about those to whom they lead, those for whom they serve. And those are the 4 things. We can obviously use more of those. I think that right now we have a real deficit in trust, where people have lost trust in their institutions, Congress, the media, churches. People have just lost trust. And the only way we're going to build that back, in my opinion, is by leaders conducting themselves in the way that I just said. And none of us are perfect. I'm not saying I'm doing that. But I think we all try to do our best.
Senator Dave McCormick, again, the junior senator from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me. Beautiful day in Erie.
You got it. 425. It's Talk Erie.